Hello and welcome. My name is Lynn, and today I'm going to be doing some 3D foam flower forming. It's been a while since I've done some flower forming, and when I saw this die set from Cat Scrappiness, I knew I wanted to pull out my foam and give it a play. So what I'm gonna do is there are some huge, I mean, these flower petal dies are huge. So I've cut a bit of foam, folded it in half so that we can get 2 cuts with every pass. And there are actually 4 different size poinsettia flowers, each with 5 petals. And I'll run it through. Now, when you do this, what you want to make sure of, if you're going to fold it in half as I'm doing here, place your dies a little bit closer to the cut edge so that you leave as big of a section in the middle where that folded edge here. And that way you could possibly get some extra cuts along that folded edge like I'm able to do here. I was able to get 2 more die cuts of the smallest flower. And so if you keep that in mind, you'll kind of stretch your foam a little bit further by just getting the most, being able to position and get the most out of it. So I'm gonna again try to get as many die cuts out of this piece of foam as possible. And when I do 3D flower forming, whether it's paper or with foam, I don't know ahead of time the combination of sizes or the number of die cuts I'll use. I kind of play that by ear, and it really just depends on the style of the dies. Because some dies, even with poinsettias, for example, they'll have only maybe 3 petals per die cut. And so you would stagger them a little bit differently to form your flower. So all that is to say is just have a little bit of a play and experiment a little. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ink up my petals and the leaves as well. And there's a lot of different ways you can add some color. Now, I do have a variety of different colored foams, as you can see here. So I've got green for the leaves and pink for the poinsettias, but you can always add a little bit more depth and dimension. And for me, I like to just put a little bit of color, a little bit of maybe a darker color than my foam towards the center. And that way it gives a little bit more depth and just increases that sort of 3D look and feel. And even though we're going to be shaping the flowers, I think it does help to add some dimension to your flowers as well. And I've die cut several. You can see I'm separating the layers here, and I've die cut all the different sizes, and I think I have at least 2 die cuts in each of the different sizes. Normally, I usually start with just as a starting point to trial run or look at what it might how full the flower is. Usually I'll use 3 different sizes and 2 die cuts each. I might not need that many because each of these die cuts actually has 5, it's a full flower, so it's 5 petals on it. So maybe we won't need that many, but we'll see when we get there. But that's usually what I prepare at a minimum. I've pulled out my iron here, and my iron is set to a pretty high heat. I think it's not the highest heat, but I think it's the cotton level. And again, just everybody's iron might be a little bit different, so you can just play around with that. If it's starting to curl up and shrink too quickly for you, then you can always lower the temperature. If you're feeling like you have to hold it up against the iron for too long, then you can increase the temperature. But assume that your first one or two petals, it's kind of like making pancakes, that it might not be the best, but that's okay, because in nature, flower petals aren't all perfectly identical. So it's totally okay to have some variation in size and shape. And you can see that the foam will start to shrink and curl. And I'm holding this so that the side that we inked up, that is facing away from the heat. And you can see once it drops off of the heat, I do a little bit of curling in the center, but then I use my ball stylus to give the petals some shape, and especially towards the center of the petals, just to round them out a little. And then I just do a little bit of cupping in the center to bring those petals inwards and upwards. And I am using oh gosh, the word escapes me now. But just be safe if you are using an iron, because you don't want to touch your iron, obviously. And so if you use a tool to grab onto your petals and keep it nice and far away, tweezers, that's the word I was looking for. That way you can kind of hold the foam against your iron, but still keep a nice safe distance away from it. And so sometimes it's a little bit easier to kind of hold your iron flat, and that way you can rest the foam on top of it. And when it's upright, it might be a little bit harder to hold the foam against the iron. So now that I've got several already shaped, so once it comes off the heat, you can take and you've done a little bit of your shaping, then you have a lot of time to actually assemble your flower. It's when the foam comes off the heat initially that you want to do any additional shaping and distressing, if that's what you want to do, because while it's warm, it's more malleable, and it will take shaping a lot better. And once it cools, then you get it's pretty sturdy. I mean, the foam is thin. You can tear it, so it's not like it's not tear resistant or anything, but it definitely has a softer look that is a little bit more realistic to flowers. And when you feel it, it has that really nice smooth kind of velvety texture, much like flowers sometimes do. So in that sense, it just gives you a very different look to using paper and shaping your paper. So I've pulled out some gold stamens, and what I'm going to do is just poke a hole right in the center here, and I've folded my stamens in half, and I just bent a piece of wire around that fold so that I can feed the wire through my hole. The wire makes it easy to pull that folded end of the stamens through the hole. So that just gives us this really lovely center of flowers, or of stamens here. If you didn't want to use stamens, there is a die cut in this set that represents can be used to represent the stamen, so you can always use the die cut as well. But I had these with the nice gold tip, and I thought they would feature nicely in the center here. And so I'm going to just go ahead and glue this. Now, I love that the leaves do have that nice circle there. It's a nice little platform to attach your flowers onto. So, so I'm going to put just a little bit of hot glue here, and that's going to help to keep the ends of the stamen nice and secured to the back of this flower as well. And you have a little bit of time with hot glue, but again, be careful. You don't want to touch your melted glue. It can burn. So you want to just make sure that you're exercising caution. And I just tore another single petal off because I didn't want 4 petals, but I wanted to have a third petal just to round that out a little bit better. And once everything is stuck down, you still have some room to kind of, zhuzh up your flower petals a little bit and your leaves. One of the things I was trying to do was just to make sure that the leaves are staggered so that they're not just sitting one right on top of each other. And if you need to apply a little extra heat, you can do that. If you need to use your ball stylus to add some extra curvature or do some additional shaping, you could certainly do that as well. You can shape these flowers even after the foam has cooled. It just isn't as malleable as when it's warm. So it may not hold that shape quite as firmly as it would if you did it originally when it came off of the iron. So keep that in mind, but it's still possible to make some adjustments like you see me doing here. And there you have one, and this is using some of the largest flower dies in the set. And so I love how it looks, and I'll show you all of that again, but with some of the smaller petals. So again, I've already inked the centers, and I am placing the foam onto the iron with the inked side face out so that it's not touching the iron, because of the way that the foam has a tendency to want to curl. That's the reason for doing that, because it the petals kind of curl back, and so that's going to look a little bit more natural. And when you stack these, it just makes a little bit more sense that way. With the foam, where to get the foam? So Crafter's Companion sells foam that I really like. It's nice and thin, and it's made specifically for this. So they sell it in packs of different colors. And in fact, they actually have, I don't happen to have it, but they do sell a winter flower foam set, so perfect for poinsettias and pine cones and stuff like that. And they also do sell a variety of different flower shapes as well. I also like Tonic Studios foam. I think they only sell it in white, but white might be all you really need because you can color your foam. And there's a lot of different ways you can color the foam. You can color it with distress ink like I've done here. You can color with pan pastels. You can color with your alcohol markers, with your water-based markers. There's a lot you can do. I'm going to take a moment here before I assemble these flowers to spritz them. This is just my homemade mica mist. So it's distilled water with mica powder and gum arabic. Gum arabic is the binding agent, and I buy that in powder form, and I mix that 1-to-1 with water, 1-to-1 by weight with water, and then I just add enough mica powder to get the the level of shimmer that I want. And that's all there is to making your own mica mist. Super easy. I would definitely highly recommend using distilled water though if you do mix up a large batch, because distilled water has all of the impurities kind of distilled out of it, so that if you're keeping it for a long time, it won't build up any sort of funky odor or smell. Okay, so then we've formed our, done some initial flower forming and shaping, misted all of our petals with some mica mist just for that nice frosty look. And so now I'll start to assemble. And I know I have zoomed in quite a bit, so you can't really see what I'm doing. But I was just experimenting with how many flowers I can build with the die cuts that I have left. And so I was just doing a little bit of a dry run to see. Now, one thing to be careful of is to also be mindful not to apply the foam too long to your iron, because, well, it can eventually burn, and it can also blister. So just be careful of that. I didn't mention the other place you could look for the foam is Sizzix. Sizzix, that might be what I'm actually using here. They sell really beautiful sets of different colored foam as well. So, and I think the Sizzix Crafter's Companion and Tonic foam are probably the best ones I've used, because what you want is a foam that's nice and thin so that it takes shape really easily. And I've tried other brands and they aren't all made equal. So so those are the ones I trust, and Sizzix and the Crafter's Companion might be a little bit easier to use because they do have a variety of different colors. Whereas Tonic, as far as I know, they only have the white, and it was hard to find. I don't even think they have it on their website. I bought it through Craft Stash. And again, I'm gonna poke a little hole in the center here, and I've attached my die cuts. Now this is using the two smallest sizes, and I've used one of the absolute smallest and 2 petals from the next size up from that. And I've poked a hole and I'm threading my stamen through, just like I did on the larger one. And I'm being careful to stagger those petals again. So I want to make sure that as I position my petals, that it's not directly on top of another petal, but rather it's between 2 petals below it. And so that's kind of how you can create a flower that looks a little bit more full and a little bit more natural. And I'll do the same here, where I'll use a bit of hot glue so that I can get the ends of my stamen nice and secured. And that way I'll have these pre-made flowers ready for a project. So what can you do with these flowers? You could make a home decor, like maybe shadow box projects with them, because they're nice and dimensional, and that shadow box could be a really nice way to put them on display, and maybe frame a photo of a special event, for example. It could be, and you could make that as maybe even a wedding present for somebody. If you had, maybe if you took a really lovely photo of the bride and groom, you could create a shadow box, or put that in a shadow box frame and add some of these 3D flowers to them. And as well, you could put these onto cards, which I'll do at the end of this video once I have all of these flowers made up. And with that though, if this is a card that you want to put through the mail, you may want to actually create a nice sturdy box so that the flower isn't crushed in the course of mailing. So that is something to be mindful of. But if you hand deliver your cards, then maybe just a nice envelope box, and it could be a very cool special occasion card, like a wedding card, or I'm going to be making a Christmas card. And so lots of different things that you can do with these. Anything from card making to home decor. I don't know that you would necessarily want to put this in a scrapbook, because once you close your book, that's going to flatten, these flowers. And so there's that potential, but I've used these to decorate mini album covers as well. So that might be something. And the flowers, while the foam is thin and you could definitely tear it, but I feel like it holds its shape better than paper does. And you can kind of you can put things on top of it, but it will actually, I think, bounce back a little bit better than paper might. So there's some really good reasons to use the foam over using paper for durability, as well as just the aesthetic of it. I really love how realistic you can get these flowers to look. And with the leaves here, some of these leaves I'm adding to the smaller flowers, I've actually distressed the leaves so they look a little bit more crinkly. I'll have to do a separate video on it, but there's a distressing tool that Crafter's Companion puts out that is really great for that distress look too, if you want your petals to have a little bit more texture and not be quite as smooth as these petals are. So lots and lots of fun. I definitely have, it's been a while since I've done flower forming, as I mentioned before, and so it's really fun to kind of pull out all of these tools and have a bit of a play. So I definitely want to do this more. The reason why I don't do it more often is mostly because I do send a lot of my cards, and so it can be hard to put cards that have these 3D flowers on them through the mail if I'm just sending the card. But at Christmas time, when we're sending gifts and cards, and I already have to package things into boxes, then it definitely makes sense to kind of dress up some cards with some things that might be a little bit more dimensional like this, and just take advantage of the fact that I have to ship it in a larger box anyway. So with today's card, I actually have a card base that I, to be honest, thought I would never make a card this big, because I generally like my small, USA 2-size cards, but I actually got, this came as a card and envelope set from a Crafters or Tonic Studios craft kit. And it's a 7x7 card base that is vanilla. And what I've done is I've cut out a frame from some gold mirror card, and I think it's more of a satin mirror, but I think it's actually from Spellbinders, if I remember correctly, because I think it's actually from one of their craft kits. So kind of mixing and matching elements from different craft kits that I get. And I made all three of these, and I thought I might use them individually, but they kind of look nice, especially on such a large card like this. They look nice on this large 7x7 card, all three of them together. I think one would have been fine, especially the larger one, but why not go really big if we're gonna go big? So I've put some 3D glue gel from Kalau on the backs of these, and I love using the Kalau 3D glue gel for things like this, because you can just put as big of a blob of glue as you need, and that's gonna it's gonna help hold some of that dimension, especially under the petals. I like to put it in the center of the petal where it's curled up quite a bit. And also with this glue gel, it's got a really, really long open time. So that gives you a lot of time to nudge things around, move things as you need. And in fact, what I end up doing is I end up pulling up all of these flowers because I wanted to add a little nest of gold thread underneath the flowers, just for a little bit of extra texture, a little extra detail, and to bring some of that gold from the sentiment, which is also from Cat Scrappiness, and bring a little bit of that down into that area with the flowers. And this gold thread is really, really lovely. It's super thin, drapes beautifully. You don't see me actually pulling it up, but you can see the final effect here of that the nest of gold thread under there. And it's just a nice little extra detail because I didn't want to add an actual bow or anything, but just wanted to put that fine thread in there. And so that's the beauty of a glue like the Kalau 3D glue gel. So really, really beautiful card. Stands really nicely as a top folding card as well. I hope that you enjoyed this video and something a little bit different for my channel, because I think it's been over a year now since I've done a 3D flower forming video, and I hope to be doing more of it too. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and thank you again for joining me. Until next time, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye.